Episode 7 is here. We are thrilled today to have on David Gilbert as our
guest. Real sink or swim moments early in the Sports Commission's history, and it ended up being, thankfully, incredibly successful.
Joined Greater Cleveland Sports Commission in 2000, which we'll get into this stuff, but a few years into your time then to pull off an event like that.
I think early on what we knew was we had to work harder than other people because
it's about to move into the part with the new stadium. What are your kind of initial thoughts on the?
I love it.
So, thank you very much for being on the show.
This will be worn a lot.
Welcome to the 216 show, highlighting Cleveland Changemakers. I am your co-host, Derek.
Hi, I'm Jack. Our goal is to inspire, inform, and entertain with an emphasis on Cleveland sports. I also want to give a big thank you to AC Roman for sponsoring episode 7.
Yes, episode 7 is here. We are thrilled today to have on David Gilbert as our guest. Cleveland native, Cleveland Heights grad, Ohio State Buckeye, now president CEO of the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission, also Destination Cleveland. We're thrilled to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on, David.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm excited for today's show.
I'm pumped, yeah.
As the conversation goes, I think we're going to find there's a lot of synergy between what goes on here at the two, what David's doing with the city of Cleveland and everything that the community that we're all a part of, is so proud. So as we get going here, we're going to go through our normal segments. We'll jump right into Two's Q's, let our audience get to know David a little bit. We get to know David a little bit more. So we'll put 60 seconds on the clock. We'll get through as many questions as we can get through in 60 seconds. Sounds good?
Great. Sounds
Derek,
great.
Jack, we ready?
I'm ready.
All right, 60 seconds on the clock. Let's go.
What city and state did you grow up in?
I grew up in South Euclid, although it's a little area that went all the way through the Heights schools. Honestly, great place to grow up. My folks were in the same little house for 55 years, and just a really great grounded neighborhood. And I feel really lucky to have grown up where I did.
Yeah. Derek?
What's your favorite thing about Cleveland?
It's a good question. I think it may sound a little trite. I think it's the people. I'm fortunate in my job. I get to travel to a lot of places, love travel, but nothing is like coming home. And I just think there is such an incredible sense of community here that's driven by the people, and it makes it a very special place.
It's awesome. Best marathon time?
3:16.
There we go.
Although that was now a little while back, but that was a big part of my life for a long time.
Nice.
Do you have children?
I do. 2 kids, a daughter who is 28, and she lives in Chicago. And although I think she's already talking about when she comes back to Cleveland, and a son who's 25, he lives in Florida. And thankfully also loves it here, and we're a very, very close family.
Yeah, that's time. That was our 60 seconds. I thought we got through a few things there, big marathon guy. I am not a runner, not a marathon guy. So I don't even have real context for that time. It sounds like it's a great time, I'm sure.
I would say a good time, maybe not a great time.
Yeah.
We didn't get to one question, but I have one more. Which event that you brought to Cleveland makes you the most proud?
Boy, that's a really good question. It probably goes back to one not a lot of people have heard of, called the International Children's Games back in 2004. It's sort of like the World's Youth Olympics, and it was the first time it was ever in the U.S. And part of it was we were awarded that event back in 2000, and honestly really didn't know what we had gotten ourselves into. And it was one of those real sink or swim moments early in the Sports Commission's history. And it ended up being, thankfully, incredibly successful. And I think set us on a stage where feeling like there was nothing that we couldn't accomplish, nothing we couldn't beat other cities to bring to Cleveland. And even today is still something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, because that was pretty early on. I mean, you joined Greater Cleveland Sports Commission in 2000, which we'll get into this stuff. But, a few years into your time then to pull off an event like that, had to kind of build some momentum and set some foundational pieces in place.
It did.
Davey has some confidence too.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. It was a lot about confidence when we were done. And we could really draw a line to a lot of other things that have been in Cleveland as a direct result of our hosting that.
Yeah,
That's great.
very cool. I can't wait to get into more of that stuff here later. So our second segment, Review the Two. We're going to try something new today on this segment. That's right. We've gotten David's order ahead of time here. Kitchen team has prepared it. As people watch episode 6, where we had the great guests of Jack and Derek, we turned them into our guests on episode 6.
Love it.
People got to meet Drew as one of our co-hosts. So Drew's going to be so kind here to come and deliver your food. So we have our breakfast egg wrap. We have a cold brew with oat milk. And we have our blueberry muffin sitting here. So we're going to allow you to try this food in front of everybody, which is,
I can be a pretty messy eater, so I don't know if
we got one napkin. We might need another napkin. We'll see.
I am.
We'll see.
I think I'm good with the napkin, and I will. I let you know, and you guys probably know. I've been here many times before, so. And that's because the food is great, and the service is great, and the place is great.
Yeah. Well, and we know you've been in here before, and this is, we say all the time, we're a why-driven place, but we can't do it without being great or being excellent at our what. And our what is, we want to have the best. Yeah, go ahead and, have a bite there. We want to have.
I will never hesitate to take a bite of good food.
We want to have the best, breakfast, lunch food. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 8 to 3. And again, you lose stigmas, you lose labels through excellent food, excellent service, excellent environment, and that's what we're all about here. So how's the wrap?
Really good.
Yeah, those are the wraps are really popular.
Yeah.
They're portable, they're easy to take with you.
Yep. I'll take one more here.
Hey, feel free. That's okay. And if you want to continue to eat as the show goes on, eat at your own risk, but you're more than welcome. Yeah. Jack, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, so it's pretty clear that the Two is your favorite restaurant in Cleveland.
Tongue in cheek. You have to say that on the Two.
Yeah, that goes without saying. Yeah. But for someone outside the city of Cleveland, how would you describe the Cleveland food scene?
I would say overall, I'm not a foodie per se. Yeah. Love food but especially when you read a lot of the reviews and obviously things we pay attention to, Cleveland does tend to be seen as a great regional destination for food. Mm-hmm. And I think we've got some of our own really strong sort of ethnic heritage foods that, look at things like West Side Market where there's still a lot of great tradition. Yeah. So I think at least how Cleveland is written about by outsiders, travel writers, et cetera, they really feel that Cleveland absolutely sort of punches above its weight as a food scene.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's right. And, it's very culturally diverse, whether you have, Little Italy or, as you said, the West Side Market or, different places in the city. Yeah. To go to. The other thing you have sitting there is our blueberry muffin. Our bakery is scratch made in-house, no artificial dyes, no seed oils. Again, nothing but the best. So, okay, Review the Two segment. As you said before, you've been here many times.
And I will keep coming back.
We appreciate you being here, absolutely. So, with that said, let's jump right into our guest highlight segment. Allow, again, our audience to get to know you a little bit further. So I'll go ahead and pose the first question here. So just, for people who maybe don't know who is David Gilbert, give a little bit of your personal story, your background.
Let's see. As you mentioned before, I grew up here. And other than going away to college and a year or two after, I think I always wanted to be back in Cleveland. I think sort of personally, I'm family means a ton to me. I really love nature. It's a big part of my life. Just anytime I can be outside, hiking, running, cycling, the kind of travel my wife and I do, our family does, tends to be outdoor places. And I think it's part of, you always look for things that sort of make you peaceful and make you whole, and that is a big part of it for me. My work is a big part of me. It's a sort of a big part of my purpose. And I've been very fortunate that I've had a career that has been focused on making Cleveland a better place. And I think as I've gotten a little older, I've realized sort of the value of community. And I think I don't necessarily mean community in the place you live. Everybody is part of lots of different communities. Your community of friends. I've always had a community around activity, my running friends, my cycling friends, now my pickleball friends, those communities, lots of different, certainly work community, Cleveland community. And I think I've always tended to put a lot of myself into making my communities better. And I'm lucky that professionally, I've really had an opportunity to try to make a difference in the city and the community that I really love.
Well, and it's amazing when professionally and personally those passions align and you're able to, really kind of carry out that purpose in all areas of your life.
Yeah, honestly, it makes life a lot better and more meaningful.
Yeah. Eric?
We all Clevelanders here. Can you just begin by telling us about growing up here and how that has impacted you?
I think growing up here, I think it's one of those, I feel like I grew up with sort of everything I needed, not everything I wanted. And I think that's a really good thing in life. And had a family that was, well-grounded but not, again, not the wealthiest, and in hindsight, had just such a really great growing up of really supportive parents, being part of a really diverse community, which I think was really helpful. And, I've always been a huge sports fan, just like the three of you are. Yeah. And so Cleveland sports was always a huge part of my growing up. Just remember going to ball games with my dad and my brother and my friends, and really enjoying going downtown to the old stadium, and then being big part of the early days of what was Jacobs Field and Gund Arena, and I think again, I feel lucky that sports also just really grounded me as a person doing them, and also just as a huge sports fan that tied back to my community.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we know, David, that you're the president and CEO of the TWO16 Sports Commission. It started in 1983, was slow to start off the ground, and then you came on in 2000 and really propelled it to give it a good boost. Could you explain to the viewers who don't know what the TWO16 Sports Commission is and how you propelled it to be how it is today?
Yeah. So the organization, I'll start there. We're a nonprofit organization, and it's really an economic development organization, and our job is to compete against other cities around the country, around the world, to host major sporting events. Okay. And it could be things that people don't know as much about, big youth volleyball tournaments, or the World Yo-Yo Championship, or big things like NBA All-Star Game, or NFL Draft, or Special Olympics we have coming in 2030. And for us, it's really all about economic development. It's about community development, and we've gone from, in our early days, hosting 2-3 events a year to now this will be the third year in a row we're hosting around 20 events. And then our organization gets very active and involved and engaged in the management of those events in some way, and basically because they're all very entrepreneurial ventures. While occasionally we will get involved in owning and operating events, generally what we focus on is other people's events that we want to be held in Cleveland as opposed to somewhere else. Okay. And the organization, it was, as you mentioned, was founded earlier, never quite got footing, and then had sort of gone out of existence. A new effort was created back in '99 to put together a new sports commission. We opened up our doors in early 2000. I was fortunate enough to be asked to head that, but it was, at the time, literally, it was 2 people. I mean, we had a little tiny donated office, a couple Sam's Club tables, a couple phones, a copier, a couple computers. We had a great board from the beginning, so a really high-level corporate board, and the teams all got really behind it. So they lent a lot of sports knowledge, sports contacts, which really helped from the very beginning. And we're not a big organization. We have 15 full-time people, several part-time. In our industry, and there is a sports commission industry, there's a national association, a couple hundred cities across the country who do what we do. We're probably one of the 2, 3, or 4 biggest of our kind in the country. So again, traditionally they're not really big organizations, but the people on our team are really focused on not only getting the events, but making them more successful in Cleveland than they would be in other places.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I would add one other, I think the other thing that's really important is the partnerships we have. So when we bring big things in, especially when we utilize Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse or Browns Stadium and or Progressive Field and so on, we do it with those entities. Oftentimes we will be the one asked to take the lead, to run lots of the events, raise the money, whatever is needed. But even though we're not a big organization, by our board, by our partnerships, by a lot of community support, it really allows us to, quite frankly, do much more than we otherwise could do. And Cleveland is, pretty much by any measure now, number of events, size, scale, economic impact, year in and year out, one of the top cities in America for hosting major events.
Yeah, no, it's really tremendous. The collaborating effort that you guys are able to, affect is huge.
Is there like when it says this event, it's down to these 3 cities, is there kind of a final pitch that you guys made?
It's a great question, because I would tell you any and every event that we bring to Cleveland is a competition. Mm-hmm. So, and sometimes we might be competing against 2 or 3, sometimes it might be 22 or 23 cities. Right. And it usually involves some sort of request for proposals, some sort of proposals. A lot of it is just understanding who that customer is, whether it's the NCAA or an Olympic governing body or whoever owns those events. Mm-hmm. Them coming to Cleveland, us going to them, really trying to understand how they're going to make their decision, what makes them successful. Sometimes it is a really formal proposal. Sometimes it's less formal. And we, in a lot of ways, we have to adapt to what they're looking for.
I see.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cleveland is continuing to become more of a destination. Can you, David, tell us about Destination Cleveland?
Yeah, so it's kind of unique that I run these 2 separate organizations, but Destination Cleveland is what's often been referred to as the Convention and Visitors Bureau or a destination marketing organization. The best way to think about it really is the Tourism Bureau for the Travel and Tourism Bureau for Northeast Ohio. It's pretty much every city, every region in the country has an organization like this. They're usually funded through a hotel occupancy tax, and our goal is to get the biggest piece of the visitor economy to Cleveland and Northeast Ohio than our competitive set. It's a big organization. We've got about 60, 65 staff people, and we really do several things. One, we're really the community's consumer marketing organization. So we do a lot of marketing campaigns and so on outside of Cleveland to get people to visit. So when people are seeing those pure Michigan ads in Cleveland, we're doing the same things in other places. We have a big sales team that is out there getting meetings and conventions to choose Cleveland. Sports are very different in their dynamic, and that's why sports commissions are very separate. But Cleveland will host 100+ meetings, conventions every year, big and small, and we compete for those. We do a lot of work on sort of the perception of Cleveland and also a lot of work around the visitor experience. But ultimately, it's around getting a far bigger piece of the visitor economy in Cleveland than might be in places around us.
That makes sense. It does. Yeah. So since you're the CEO of both those organizations, is there any overlap between the 2?
There really isn't. At least in term, I'm the only shared staff person. My assistant and I. They're separate nonprofit organizations, separate boards, separate funding and types of funding, separate staffs. When really, really big things come to town, they do very different things in how they perform. So some of the biggest events, whether it was the Republican convention that was here, or certain things related to the draft, or both organizations, even though Sports Commission, with many of those will run it, there's pieces Destination Cleveland will get very involved in. I would say they're very complementary, but they really are completely separate entities.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think, that gives us a great kind of overview understanding of the what of what you do. I think the piece that and I have a lot of questions, but, the piece that, we're all here for is, you're a Cleveland change maker. You've, through professionally, personally, collaboration, working with so many other people, you've created a ton of positive change, in our city. I think the vehicles that you've been able to do that are the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission, Destination Cleveland, but now really getting into the why of why you do those things and how you do those things. As we transition into our Changemakers segment, the economic impact is obviously tremendous, but here at the two, I think there's a lot of similarities between what we do because, we say all the time, our vision statement here is life without labels. We're here to lose the stigmas, lose the labels, we replace those with excellence. So whether it's for our individuals or our graduates, you're really doing it the same thing at a greater, scale, not necessarily impact, but greater scale. As far as, losing the stigmas, changing the perception of Cleveland, of the city. So can you kind of talk through, was that a part of your conscious strategic thought process? Hey, I have to lose some of these stigmas, some of the public perception we have to change. Is that a part of your thought process?
I think it's evolved over time. I think early on, certainly Cleveland has had perception issues going back to probably the 60s for a lot of things that are no longer relevant. When a lot of manufacturing jobs left and a lot of the industries that built Cleveland, you had the river caught on fire, one of many cities, but Cleveland caught that stigma. And so I think early on what we knew was we had to work harder than other people because we had to show, quite frankly, it helped develop our business model that we could do more for these events in making them successful than other cities. And we needed to do that because we sort of had to have a different tool a little bit to overcome some of those perception issues. I think, over the last 25 years or so, and we do a lot of research on this, a lot of that perception has changed. We still have a long way to go. But I think what we've learned a lot about is, one, passion means a lot. And it's interesting, the people who work for both organizations tend to be so passionate about Cleveland. I would say we don't hire for that in particular, but it tends to make people, if you're passionate about anything you do, you guys obviously are. And I think it makes you more successful at what you do because you do it from here as much as up here. And I think that what's kind of cool is we've learned over time that part success breeds success. So if you host major events and they're successful, it's not a big world of those folks. Word tends to get out. But also what we've learned from a lot of research is the most important thing we can ever do to change people's perception of Cleveland is to get them to experience it. And the perception of Cleveland from those who've never been here versus those who have is dramatic. So, early on, we would host a big event. We'd say, great, if 500 people are here or 20,000 people are here, you get big economic impact. But what we've really learned is the other, maybe bigger benefit is that now you have 500 people, 20,000 people or more that have their minds changed about Cleveland because they were here. And oftentimes we know as many of those people were never here before. And so I think we start to see a real good cumulative effect of that. And especially, with the advent of social media and how critical that's become over the past 10 years, and now even with AI, where information is being sourced not by people who write articles about Cleveland, but by any of us who might put on our Instagrams things we like. It's sort of crowdsourcing of of perception. And so I think that our work has tended to be even more elevated in its importance by not just the victory of of hosting something, a meeting, a convention, a big event, or getting people here as a tourist, but what they think of Cleveland because of that visit and how they then spread the word to their friends and family and their networks. Yeah. And so I think that it's exciting because I feel like much more now than I ever did before that the work we're doing now will be very relevant to Cleveland 20 years from now, and not just now or over the next 12 months.
Yeah. That is, Jack. Before you ask your question, I mean, that is so similar to what we say all the time here at the TWO. We want people. You have to come in here and experience it. People say, "Oh, I want to have a phone call, or I want to hear this or that." And it's like, no, you really have to come here and experience it. And it's not that we're directly attacking or rebutting the labels or the stigmas, but when you come in and you experience excellence, when you experience a successful event, naturally the labels and the stigmas fall away, and those become replaced with success and with excellence. So, there's a lot of similarities there with the way that we
Well, and I
think.
know we'll talk about it a little bit more, but it's just it's one of the reasons we are so passionate and wanted so deeply to win the rights to host Special Olympics for 2030, because we believe it will have a bigger impact on Cleveland long term than any event we have ever hosted, because of people seeing. It's such a great brand, and it's not just the economic impact, but we think more people will be involved in that event from Cleveland than anything we've done, and they will see what abilities are like. And having heard you all talk about what you do, that's what it's about.
Yeah, focus on strengths.
Yeah.
Focus on abilities.
For sure. So David, the common theme from our past guests has been mentioning you by name, actually, one of them being Bob Tane. And I know that they mentioned how you're such a great businessman and an even better person. I'm sure because of that you've gotten offers to move elsewhere outside of Ohio and Cleveland. Has there been anything specific that has kept you here in the city?
One, appreciate the kind words, and you mentioned Bob, who has been probably my greatest mentor, professionally that I've ever had.
Well, Bob, if anybody has gone back and watched previous episodes, Bob said David Gilbert was the best hire I ever made. So that coming from Bob, that's quite a compliment.
Extremely kind. He is a wonderful man. So that's great. I think what's kept me here more than anything is I feel so lucky that I get to do something I'm passionate about, and the passion comes from the ability to help community. And you have to run a good bit, nonprofit organizations, as you all know, have to be great businesses. It's not somebody says it's not a way of doing business. It's just it's a tax status. But when I have had opportunities to do this type of work in particular in other cities, what I've realized is it would never be a passion. It would just be a job. Even if it was some bigger, sexier type of market. I also, honestly, I kind of like hard, challenging things. Yeah. And, to me, with what we do, we have to win. We have to compete against other cities and win. Mm-hmm. And I'm also a very competitive person. And the satisfaction of Cleveland winning, I don't know if I would get that satisfaction if it were Dallas or Phoenix or some other place. It seems a little easier to me. You're some bigger place. And those aren't my places. Doesn't mean they're not great places. They're not my places.
That's funny. When we were preparing for the show, we joked around a little bit. It's almost like LeBron. You win one in Cleveland. That one, and I've never heard LeBron say this, but I would imagine this is how you have to feel. That one in Cleveland means more than all of the other ones everywhere else. Kind of that same effect.
Yeah, I would think you're exactly right. And what's amazing is, it's similar, and his being from here, it's the passion we all saw when he won. Yeah. That's not just winning a championship. No. To your point, that goes way beyond.
Yeah. But again, it speaks to the people. It speaks to the who people are at their core here in Cleveland. People are just they're different here. Yes. Okay, so you know, I think one of the exciting things that's happening, and as Clevelanders, this has been a topic of discussion for a long time. You know, we had a quote from you where you said Cleveland is starting to transform from a city on the water to a waterfront city. You want to kind of talk a little bit about what that could look like? Or?
Yeah. You know, I think, one, cities like Cleveland, sort of older cities, if you look, we're where we are because of the water. You know, when Cleveland was founded 200 plus years ago is because of our confluence at you know, the lake and the river, and that's where commerce was. And what we did really well was push our water away from us and make it very industrial where people couldn't enjoy it. And we did it way longer than other cities. And it's now being finally recognized and highly developed as a place on the water. So one, I go back to, I think a lot about Edgewater Park, which just happens to be probably my favorite place around Cleveland. And if you look at when the Metro Parks took it over maybe a dozen years ago from what it was before, not only is it dramatically different, but if you look at the development just to the south of it, just to the west of it, it's being by the water and allowing people to be by the water allows for things to happen. And I think we're finally at a point now with incredibly exciting developments that not just are pretty pictures, but are happening, where you have developers, you have organizations, you have public entities that are spending now billions of dollars over the next 20 years to make us a very different place and a very water-centric place. And I think it is the one thing we could do as a community to absolutely transform us to be a very different place and elevate us over other cities that we compete with, cities like Columbus, Indianapolis, and many others. And if you look at along the riverfront, along the lakefront, what is already under construction, what is starting, it's dramatic. And I think we've just started to think about, particularly through Destination Cleveland, we need to be way ahead of it. We need to get our own local community to think of ourselves as a waterfront city and start to project that outwardly so that when these things truly begin to take shape, and many of them already are, it's not going to be a surprise. And perception change takes time. So we need to be out ahead of this. And again, a lot of it starts internally, get ourselves to think this way, but also others. And I really think if 10 years from now, Cleveland will look dramatically different than the way it does now because of development along the water, not because of one new building or, you know, we always tend to look for the next big thing and, well, the next stadium, the next thing is going to solve our problems. It's not. But making us a waterfront city will make us, which really is our DNA, will make us a very different place.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. What role can Clevelanders play in shaping Cleveland's future?
It's such a good question. I think that honestly is where all the change begins. Yeah. And, you know, growing up, you know, I think we're all from here. We all know this place. We've been a little bit of a sort of a woe is us place, whether it's from sometimes our sports or just all the stigmas against Cleveland. That's changed. And I think a lot of younger people who move here, it doesn't even enter their consciousness. That was a generation ago, 2 generations ago. And so I think we've done a lot of research, and it's interesting. Back in 2013, the first time we measured this through Destination Cleveland, we did some research to measure how locals feel about their own community, because we saw it as a business problem. Especially with the advent of social media and how that was an incredibly strong way, as opposed to travel writers or advertising and so on, to get people to change their perception. Back then, 34% of Clevelanders said they would recommend Cleveland as a place to visit for friends and family. That was an incredibly poor number. Today, that number is 92%, a dramatic turnaround. And so now, it's a tool for us. We in this town are our own change. And so, you know, Destination Cleveland can do all the marketing we want. Our budget is this big, you know, out in the universe, and we compete against other cities. We compete against Coca-Cola, anybody who's out there marketing. locals and what we say about our own community. And it's not just about someone who talks about the touristy stuff. It's what people put online about your place. It's about maybe someone's favorite dog park. It's about their favorite sandwich at a place. It's about their favorite park, whatever they like about their sports. And the fact that we now have this tool of 92% of locals that would recommend, it's such an insightful question, because I think all locals need to do is say to the world, however they do it and whatever networks they do, what they love most about their community. And that does and will make a huge change.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, why you're such a change maker in Cleveland. It takes a visionary to have the long-term, plan vision for, hey, this is what it needs to look like in 10 years, 20, 25 years, which, you've been with them for 25 years now. It takes that approach of, hey, you have to come experience it. That's how you change the image. That's how you lose the stigmas. You start to build confidence, right? We say all the time here, if we can establish a baseline of confidence with those that we're training, everything else becomes so much easier, right? If we're all individually projecting confidence and success about our city, it's contagious, right? It's contagious. Everybody experiences it. But it takes hard work. You have to put in the work, and it takes consistency. So we appreciate you doing that on behalf of our community, on behalf of Cleveland, and the change that I think everybody feels is real. You can talk about a statistic, but I think everybody can sense that too. Everybody feels that.
Yeah, when you mentioned that statistics, is there like a couple of things that you can attribute that to for it rising so much?
I think it's a handful of things. One, I think some things that Destination Cleveland did at that time, and we gathered all local media together. We talked about it as a business problem for Cleveland, and I think there were a lot of strategies. Just then, just hashtags were becoming big, but I think a lot of it is, it takes time to project belief. And I think what you just mentioned about people see it, they feel it. And you have to lead by example. We don't, if national media, used to be, if somebody wrote some article about Cleveland, we would be all defensive and write them, forget it. If they want to say what they say what they say. We know how great this place is. So I do think what you were talking about, I do feel like 2016, I know it was, almost 10 years ago already, we started to see a big, switch, Cleveland hosting the RNC. So you had this big, and I think back then, politics were a little less divisive. This community was really proud. There were 12 cities who bid to host that convention. We won the rights. It had nothing to do with, we always said it wasn't red or blue. It wasn't politics. It was green. We were bidding on both the Republican and the Democrat convention. We didn't care. We wanted the world to see us, and it went incredibly well. Obviously, then Cavs won the championship. Indians went to the World Series. And I do feel like that year also gave just a big boost in a shift of confidence. Not that, these kinds of change don't happen because of one thing, because of one event, one championship. But I do feel like there was a little bit of it had been building, but a little bit of a switch being flipped of sort of institutionally as a community, the woe is us starting to get away from Clevelanders.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Winning changes everything.
Yes,
well, and I think, you have 3 professional sports teams here in a city. The fabric, you talked about community. It's about having those common points of, rallying around something together. The fabric of our community is so much the Browns, Guardians, Cavs. So as we kind of transition into our Cleveland Sports Overtime segment, I think it all just goes so hand in hand, So, Jack, you want to go ahead and ask the first question here in Cleveland Sports Overtime?
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously the big topic right now is the Browns moving to Brook Park with the new stadium. What are your kind of initial thoughts on the move?
I think honestly, sort of mixed feelings. I'm a big downtown person. I think you try to keep your big assets together. On the other hand, us having a dome with a big development can also be great. So it really isn't. I think people have seen this as a black and white issue. It's not. And we are already working very hard with the Browns on looking at what are other big events that we can work with them to host at the new dome. And so it will certainly present some great opportunities. And we also need to work hard on making sure that that piece of the lakefront gets developed. It's not as easy as you have this big, big pad and all of a sudden it's going to be developed. If that were the case, a lot more of our lakefront would have been developed 20, 30, 50 years ago. Right. You have to work really hard at it. There's a new lakefront authority that the mayor helped create that has really added some focus. And but in the end, very hopeful for what other events that the new dome in Brook Park will be able to bring to Cleveland.
Yeah, just another asset to the community. Like you said, it's not black and white. It could be a huge win-win, if everybody, not to say there's not downsides or negatives, because there's no situation's perfect.
Right, and nothing in life is black and white and a win and lose.
Yeah. So I think it'll be exciting to see how that develops, what new opportunities maybe that opens up for you. Yeah.
For sure. What excites you most about Cleveland sports right now?
Well, considering today, if I'm not dating it, is the day before Cavs opener. Right. Very excited about that. And it's, man, what they have put together on the floor. And I think even with Strus and Garland out for extended periods, they're going to be a great team. Obviously, long season, as we've all seen. The postseason is very, very different, but really optimistic. And honestly, I'm also optimistic about the Guardians, how they perform down the stretch. The one thing we know going into next season, there's a lot of promise for the rotation. And even though they had a lot of offensive troubles, and I'm sure they'll work within their parameters to try and fix it, I think the hardest thing to have in baseball, particularly for smaller market teams where budgets are out of necessity less than people like the Dodgers and Yankees and others, we're going in next year with an incredibly promising starting rotation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Baseball's just so hard with the salary cap and the bigger markets, but the Cavs, it's very exciting. We'll see if they can take that next step and take it into the playoffs, and be able to take it a little deeper.
What's your take on the Tyrese Proctor this year?
Tyrese Proctor, he'll be a backup for the.
He'll be a backup dude.
Yeah. Anytime you have an experienced team and you've had success, you're just adding pieces, right? You're not adding. You don't get that third star.
Right.
But
I will tell you, the one thing I have a lot of confidence in the Cavs. Kobe Altman and his team. It's amazing what they've been able to pull off. Yes. And it's one of those where, I'm not an expert. I didn't know Tyrese Proctor going in. Right. But if they saw what they saw in him as a pick, I feel really good about it.
Well, you think about the little things they can do, right? The Ty Jeromes of the world last year who made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And didn't play all the way through into the playoffs. But, those are the things that as a championship caliber team, you're hoping get you over the hump a little bit. Yes. Just give you that little bit more.
100%.
I think the X factor would be Lonzo Ball. If he can stay healthy. Give
them a little more size.
Just watching him a little bit in the
position.
preseason, man, that guy, his whole well-rounded game is really incredibly impressive.
He's a great overall player. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
He just needs to stay on the floor, though.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stay healthy. Get through the physicality of the playoffs. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned it a little bit before, the 2030 Special Olympics. Either you have the opportunity to talk about that a little bit, or any other big events on the horizon that you want to talk about?
I think we're always pursuing. Next year we have NCAA Division I wrestling, which is a huge event, and we're always going after. We always talk. I'll say it. We always talk about our bread and butter as an organization for Sports Commission is sort of a lot of singles and doubles, using a sports analogy.
The Guardians play a little small ball.
That's exactly right. But the home runs are important, because the community gets excited. Big economic impact. What we've always loved are events where the impact can go beyond just economic impact. And even things we can do around programming and other things that we've done around Women's Final Four, around NBA All-Star, things that, quite frankly, other cities haven't done. And we've always had our eye on Special Olympics. And you know, again, it was a long competition to get it. It came down to Cleveland and Nashville as the last two cities. And it's a very, very big undertaking. You know, we have to raise over $30 million. And thankfully already we have a great head start, a lot of people committed. But what's going to be amazing about it is what it can do for this community. And I think already the premise of it that we've had has seemed to be coming to life, and how many people have just reached out proactively to say, what can I do to help? Unlike any other thing we've ever had. And certainly it's going to be, you know, we'll have 5,000 athletes, coaches, and officials from, you know, every state, and we'll have probably another 10 to 15,000 friends, family, media, and so on. But to us, it's also about the tens and tens of thousands of locals that can get involved. Whether it's making sure we have a sellout at the opening. When I say sellout, it's probably going to be free, or it'll be $10. You know, it's not pretty much everything for the community is free. But we'll need 10,000 or more volunteers. We want to make sure that every venue for these athletes is packed. You know, for these athletes, this is their Olympics, and it is all about ability. And different sports have different levels of ability. Some sports, you'll see, you know, athletes that can compete with the best college athletes. Some, not as much. Doesn't matter. But for these folks, getting here is in many cases the pinnacle of their athletic life, and being chosen to be here. And we want to make sure that this community embraces it, unlike any other city that ever has. And so we are incredibly excited. And yes, it will be probably $70 to $80 million in economic impact. Amazing. But I think it is the kind of thing where in 2050, people are going to be still talking about when Cleveland hosted the Special Olympics, that they were there, what a feeling it gave them, and how does it change people's minds? I mean, we were talking about before. We know when people come to Cleveland, they experience it, it changes their perception. I think the same will happen with Special Olympics, and we're really excited to try and help facilitate that.
Yeah, what a great partnership between, you know, the city of Cleveland, Special Olympics, you know, and 4 years is going to go like that. It's going to be 2027 here shortly, and you know, it'll be here before we know it.
Absolutely.
So you guys have some work ahead of you.
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah. But we never, you know, thankfully, like I said, we like hard things, and you know, it's one of those high risk and really high reward for this community. Yeah.
David, we want to thank you for being on the show. We all have our Browns themed together shirts on here, so we have.
This was not planned out.
One of those for you, Life Without Labels on the back.
I love it.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. This will be this will be worn a lot. So appreciate it.
I'll tell you, it's
very,
more
very much.
comfortable.
Appreciate
it. Looks
it.
a little better after a win.
Huh?
It's more comfortable
we were just
even
talking
after
about how Mondays feel so different after a win.
They feel so different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Derek,
you for
Jack.
coming on. Yeah. That's all the time we have today, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Please follow our socials so you stay up to date on future content. Derek, what do we always say?
Go make a difference together. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.